Picture a power so big, it stretched around the entire world, touching every continent and influencing countless lives. This was the British Empire at its peak, a force that changed the fate of countries and shaped the modern world. From the freezing lands of Canada to the hot deserts of Australia, the British flag flew high, symbolizing control and influence. But how did a small island nation become so powerful, dominating vast territories across the globe? The story of the British Empire is a complicated one, made up of exploration, conquest, trade, and taking advantage of others' resources and people. It's a story of big dreams, ruthless actions, and the never-ending human desire for power and dominance. This isn't just a story of kings and queens, but of everyday people, soldiers, sailors, traders, and missionaries who played their part in this vast empire. Get ready to be amazed, challenged, and left thinking about what this once mighty empire left behind and how it continues to influence our world today. The beginning of the British Empire happened in the late 1500s, when Queen Elizabeth I was in charge. This was a time of big changes, when the old medieval world was becoming the Renaissance. Elizabeth, a clever queen, saw the potential of voyages to discover new lands. She saw a chance to make England more important, get involved in the profitable spice trade, and challenge rivals like Spain and Portugal. With her support, adventurers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh became famous. These early journeys, though dangerous, set the stage for the British Empire. They made England a major sea power and made the nation want to expand overseas even more. The British Empire didn't become powerful by being peaceful. It was a combination of strategic warfare, shrewd diplomacy, and relentless ambition that fueled its rise. While trade was important, it was often backed up by the strong British military and clever diplomacy. Treaties were signed, but they were always underpinned by the threat of military force. The East India Company, started in 1600, became a powerful tool for British expansion. It wasn't just a trading entity, it was an instrument of imperial policy. At first a trading company, it built up armies, fought wars, and made deals, becoming its own empire. It wielded immense power, often acting independently of the British government. It quickly became very influential in India, using disagreements between local rulers to its advantage and taking more control. The company manipulated local politics to expand its reach. The British turned rival Indian rulers against each other, offering military help in exchange for trade advantages. This divide and conquer strategy was highly effective. The Royal Navy made sure Britain ruled the seas, protecting trade routes and showing off its power around the world. It was the backbone of British maritime dominance. The British Army won many battles, capturing important lands and strengthening imperial goals. These victories solidified Britain's status as a global superpower. The British Empire's success came at a high cost, paid by millions in its colonies. Taking land and resources was often violent and forced people from their homes. The British believed they were better than other races and cultures, which they used to justify their rule. Local businesses were shut down, raw materials were taken cheaply, and people in the colonies were taxed without any say. This led to widespread anger and uprisings, like the Indian Rebellion of 1857. From sugar plantations in the Caribbean to diamond mines in South Africa, the story of the British Empire is connected to exploitation. This dark side of empire still affects Britain's relationship with its former colonies. The Bengal Famine of 1770 is a terrible example of how British colonial policies hurt people, leading to one of the most devastating famines in history. This disaster, which killed about 10 million people, was made worse by the East India Company's greed and mismanagement. After winning the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the company took control of Bengal, establishing a regime focused on profit. Wanting to make as much money as possible, the company made rules that ruined the local economy, disregarding the well-being of the people. Farmers had to grow cash crops like indigo and opium instead of food, and weavers were forced to work under unfair monopolies, which stifled their livelihoods. When a severe drought hit in 1769, the agricultural system fell apart, unable to cope with the lack of food production, and people began to starve in massive numbers, with no relief in sight. Even with this crisis, the company continued to focus on profit. showing a complete lack of empathy, exporting grain and keeping supplies for themselves, exacerbating the famine. The Bengal famine shows the horrible consequences of uncontrolled greed and imperial ambition, leaving a tragic legacy that should never be forgotten. By the early 1900s, the British Empire started to have problems. World War I, even though Britain won, came at a huge cost. The war made people in Britain's colonies feel more connected to their own nations. Soldiers from India, Africa, and the Caribbean returned home to societies that still treated them unfairly because of their race. Fighting for freedom in other countries while being denied it at home encouraged independence movements. Nationalist leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Kwame Nkrumah, and Jomo Kenyatta challenged British rule. These leaders inspired large groups of people to demand an end to colonial control. The British economy, weakened by years of war, could no longer afford the huge cost of running a global empire. The British Empire, once a symbol of global power, is now a fading memory. But its impact is still felt in the world today, good and bad. The British Empire might be gone, but its influence still affects millions of lives. The British Empire left behind things like roads, bridges and other infrastructure, democratic governments, and a global language. However, colonialism also left behind exploitation, damage to different cultures, and inequality that still exists today. Borders drawn by colonial powers continue to cause conflict. The economic systems set up during colonial times often keep countries poor and dependent. Understanding the history of the British Empire is important for understanding how the world became the way it is. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.